Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the NLC Division 1. It is an honor to be able to welcome you to the highest level of competition we have here in the North. My name is Duckling, and for this evening and for most of this split, I will be joined by my lovely friend. You're that way. No, I took the wrong guess. Riddle. Hello, man. Just take it.
Flame him, it's an L already.
Oh, I had so much hope there as well already, but go on.
Thank you very much. Yeah, super excited to be here. We actually, made our Division 2 debut together back on my birthday last year, February 10th. So about 355 days ago, roughly. So we're actually, making those strides together 1 year apart almost to be on Division 1 now. Get to showcase 4 great games for everybody today. It's shaping up to be quite entertaining.
It's gonna be very entertaining, and while we're at it, Rude, why wouldn't we just go in and take a look at the matches coming up today, just so you guys know what we have been cooking here over at the NLC in terms of the schedule. I can already start you off by telling that we have Riddle Esports, a team that looks so good in week 1, going up UniQ Esports, who are still looking to get that first win.
That is, I think the series or the summarization of today is going to be fairly one-sided matches featuring a game of the day, because I'm looking at that game number 3, Veneer versus Verdant. I actually think that one could be a fairly interesting one where the teams are a little bit more closely matched, and we could certainly see not necessarily an upset, because I don't know what you would count an upset, but by those standings metrics anyway, I don't think that you can count Veneer out off the rip.
Yeah, and talking about that, so the first matchup, UniQ against Riddle. You mentioned that as well. It's likely going to be a one-sided one. Moving over to the next game as well, that would be Domino going up against Nord. Nord looking really good as well. So you would put them as clear favorites. We have all voted for them in our predictions as well. But there's always the chance for the underdog. And moving on to that Verdant Veneer game, I do know that we have something special planned actually. Or we didn't plan this. There's something from the lovely guys over at Verdant who made a nice little this or that video that you guys can all get the chance to watch just in a couple seconds when I get figured out, I believe.
Yeah.
Welcome to This or That, the game in which the players are given a statistic and 2 choices to guess which has the higher figure. We'll be tracking scores over the course of the video to see who knows more about the NLC.
It has to be touch.
Touch?
Touch.
Touch?
Touch.
I guess Clyde.
Me?
It has to be Clyde, no, because he's the oldest, been doing it for so long. It has to be Clyde.
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 That's work with both now. That's so interesting. Actually, I'll say Ploxy.
Ploxy.
Taxa.
Me. Taxer.
Fuck.
Veneer.
I mean, I don't really know who plays in Veneer, so I would just say Verdant.
That's gonna be Veneer, I think.
But does that count for Teleligan also? Then I would assume it's Veneer. I think they have been for longer.
Veneer.
I'd say that's probably pretty close. Is it an edge to Nille?
Nile.
Nihus. I would guess Nihus.
42! Holy shit, I need a new top laner.
That's me.
Eero.
Eero.
He's a Casio one trick, what do you expect?
I feel like Chrisberg is one, he plays so many hyper carries. I feel like poor Kevo, some rosters have been left on the bottom. I think it's Kevo.
It's not Kevo, so CRISPR.
I think it's Chrisberg.
I don't think Chrisberg plays that much Ezreal, as far as I've seen lately, but I think it's Kevo, no?
Kevo.
I've seen his S3 once, I never want to see it again, okay? I never want to see your S3 again!
Baloo. Baloo.
Baloo.
That's gonna be Baloo.
I think it's Baloo.
Yeah, and welcome back from that nice little bit, this or that. I actually really enjoyed it. We couldn't hear it here, but I have actually watched it outside of this, so I will say it was a very good video. I really love what the content all our teams have been doing. It has been great so far, although I will have to say, I do feel bad for Taxa. The only guy did not get 6 points, only 5, and it was because he trusted himself and his own Lee Sin win rate. And I know this guy loves Lee Sin, but I'm gonna be honest, I have looked at the statistics. His Lee Sin doesn't have that best win rate, although... You know,
Dude, he already got 5. He already got 5. Okay, we don't need to put him down even more. We don't need to be beating the dead horse here. But what I want to remind everybody who doesn't have full context of that video, the final question, who has more Ornn games, WoW or Baloo? Baloo is a support. WoW is a top laner. You need to remember that Baloo still won that with the flex pick of Ornn to support. And obviously WoW... is not particularly known for the Ornn either. We have to mention that one. But, you know, credit to Baloo. He's got the flex picks in his pocket.
Yeah, I mean, I can respect it as well. I saw that, and when I saw the question, I was just like, yeah, there's no way this is WoW. I have never seen that guy play anything that tanky, in my opinion. So, yeah, seeing him on the carries makes sense to me, and hopefully he doesn't go on that Ornn, because I did like his Jax over in week 1. But I want to take this intro predictions, because this also ties up to the last matchup as well. There are some bold predictions this week, and there is one in particular that stood out to me in terms of the last matchup, where Ruddy will be going up against natives, and that is someone in particular called Middlecut. I think his name is some caster who cast in the European scene. There he is. He has predicted natives.
Some strange person who has opted for the natives prediction. I mean, I'm one to talk. Currently 6 out of 8, not particularly doing too well, but I think this natives prediction is slightly more founded than research might first suggest, because natives last week actually had a very close game up against Verdant. I'm going to say it, the only real reason they lost was because Taxa was incredible on the smites. But without those smite steals, I think Taxa got 2 Barons and denied a soul with his steals. So I think if natives had have got those, they would be 1-on-1 right now. They would be sitting very pretty in the middle of the standings as opposed to being at the bottom. And the way Ruddy looked in their second game of the week was also not particularly what we're expecting from what we'll say is a top tier team, right? They got absolutely slaughtered in game number 2, and it wasn't close. So I'm not going to say that Middlecott is, you know, he's got my support, he's got my backing, because obviously I do think Ruddy have got the win, you saw on the predictions. But I can see the logic, I can understand where he's come from.
And I mean, sometimes, you know, you gotta make those brave decisions to try and see if you can get yourself ahead. You've tried that twice now. And
I'm twice behind.
So, let's see if you can catch up today, maybe. You'll at the very least get a point over Middlecut in the case that natives do not win.
Taxa trolled me last week as well, because I again predicted natives in their game versus Verdant. Everybody on social media flamed me, and then I almost got it right, but it was a Taxa gap, and he stole all those objectives. And I lost the prediction. But, you know, I've gone for those risky predictions. Some of them are more precedented than others. We don't talk about the week or the day 1 prediction, though.
Yeah, but I do really want to stick with your native points. I do find it very interesting. I listened to the podcast called Caster Curse from some of the ES Lawcasters, Tom Sonic and Rose B&D, I do believe, just to give them that proper shout out. And some of these guys on the new native roster actually come from that ES Law scene, so they were really hyped to see Remix and Flawed in particular step into the NLC scene. And while it's fair to say, considering the amount of steals that Taxa had against natives, that Flawed had a pretty flawed performance, I am excited to see if he can build on that and, you know, get himself settled in the league and, you know, be able to contribute. And I am excited to see how this native project goes and if they're able to pick up some wins.
And I think the flip side of that ESLOL coin being Remix actually had a fairly decent showing in that game, particularly game number 2, was on the Jinx and actually looked very formidable with that champion. The late game hyper carry got to that late stage and was pumping out DPS in the team fights. I've also, you know, had a look, found some social media footage of his own gameplay, and I know that this isn't relevant for this patch, but going into 13.1b, there is some dark builds coming out, and I'll just leave it at that, but that build paths for ADCs are changing, and that I believe either next week or the week after, we all need to be aware that the native spot lane could be pulling out some interesting item builds.
I am very excited to see how these games today goes, because it feels like we have 3 games that on paper should be one-sided, and it never really turns out that way. So I have a feeling that one of these could go the other way. But let's, Rude, bring it back into our first game. It is Riddle going up against UniQ. Probably the easiest game today to predict, I will say, because Riddle I had a couple doubts about them. How was Johan gonna perform after he has spent a year not playing competitively over in the LCK? Was he gonna be in that top level? But I have my answer. It's a clear yes. He dominated in the NLC in week 1. And with that, my doubts about Riddle have been, removed, and I feel really confident about predicting this team.
And it's important to remember as well that Johan kind of dominated in the LCK as well before he took that 1 year off. Finished 3rd on Hanwha Life, was able to have a very strong performance in the LCK, so wasn't by any means like your middle of the pack LCK chat player that comes over to an ERL. Johan looked fierce, and obviously in this first week has continued to display that. Firerain, another Korean import, that's that mid-jungle duo, has spent a little bit of time out of Korea, but played in the TCL last split on Galatasaray, I believe, as well. Came in, did a more than serviceable job holding his own and really contributing to that mid-jungle synergy. And I think that with those two together, we are obviously up against a unique roster where we haven't seen, I'll say, Paul, the unique mid laner, get punished too much. But I think that today is actually going to be a strong test for Paul in the mid lane for Unique, because he needs to be able to be that consistent rock that we've sort of seen him be for Unique, even though they haven't found a win. If they're going to get it, it has to come from some stability in the mid lane to then leverage power points across the rest of the map.
Yeah, and sticking to that point as well, and kind of elaborating on it, talking about Paul, he helped Kafla and Hungry Knights promote up into the Prime League Division 3 just last summer. Didn't get to play in Prime League Div 3 as the team did then end up promoting to Division 2, but he helped them promote to that. So he's taking a big step now from Prime League Division 3 all the way up to NLC Division 1, and he had a really solid week 1 considering that fact. He didn't look out of place, he did stay even in most of the lanes, against some pretty tough opponents, I will say as well. So I'm really excited to see how he can build on that and slowly but surely start solidifying yourself as an NLC level 1 caliber player. And I really do feel like Paul has the potential to be that.
Yeah, I mean, the mid pool in the entire league is just so stacked that it's always going to be difficult, but like you say, has certainly stood up to the test thus far. And I think that for Unique, we do need to see a little bit more prominence from the side lanes, again, a bit more from Antwerp. Had a particularly difficult Xin Zhao game, and that's a champion that just if you get behind, it only looks bad for you because you have to go in to be useful. So there's not really a good way of looking great on Xin Zhao when you're losing a game. But those are the types of situations that we maybe need to see Antwerp dialing back the aggression when it's not so warranted, and then allowing for the carries on the squad to get a bit more access in the game and get some more damage found as well.
Yeah, and I would like to take this conversation route up towards the top lane now, because this is actually a matchup I am personally really invested in. Starting off on the side of Riddle, we do have Banderas, who over in the Norwegian scene had a lot of success and ended up joining the Ricky just last year in the NLC Division 1. I talked about him in NLC Division 1 last year as the Bifrost Kryptonite. He always had success against that team back in the Norwegian scene when Bifrost was clearly on the stronger, more funded roster. He always managed to find the upset. And he has really evolved into this very strong carry top laner. And he's then going up now against Nihus, who is a very weird one to really describe, but someone who's been in and out of the competitive scene over in the Danish level. But every time he went back into the Danish league, he was at the top, he won trophies, then he dropped out, spent a half a year away, came back, continued to win trophies, continued to be at the top. So to see these carry top laners with so much success behind them go up against each other would be really interesting.
Yeah, like you say, like Nihus has been playing for so long. He's 25 years old, has got a Leaguepedia history as long as several arms, really, has got that tenure in the scene. And obviously up against Banderas, who actually, sort of the last tournament that we saw them play was a Telia League in autumn in the end of 2022. Won that with a 3-2 on Domino up against Riddle. If you find the irony in that a little bit, got to now pick up and be a part of that team. So both of these top laners, as you mentioned, Duckling, certainly a point to be keeping our eyes on, because they've played carries, they've played tanks, they've played the full plethora, and can certainly go off.
And just to kind of add some last points to this Riddle versus Unique game, as we are getting close to heading into it, I want to turn our eyes down to the support. A Danish matchup here on the support roles, Pedersen versus Kiba. Both of these have been long-time Danish support. I remember Kiba, before he was called Kiba, he was called Batu. He played in the jungle back in the UKLC in the day, and I think it was called Demise, that roster. It was a full Danish roster, then Vox was on it as well, and it had decent success. But then he played a bit around being a coach, and now he's back to being a support. But when he got into that support role, he really fitted, and he started doing wonders over an Astralis talent just last year. And I'm really excited to see how he can build on that, especially his roam timers were really good and helped elevate Australia's talent from a very passive team to a more aggressive early game oriented team where they were able to build leads thanks to good roams from Keeper in particular.
And I think that in this lane specifically as well, we can't talk about the bot lane without touching on the AD carry that Riddle have, that being Reptile. Had a great split over on Unicorns of Love in the Prime League last season, has come over to the NLC, and I think that the game we got to see, I think day number 1 on Zeri was just peak Reptile. He was touted in the Prime League for just being a weak side king, never really got resources, never particularly got shown any support from the team, but then would show up to a team fight and demolish.
As we are heading into the draft, Johan had a lot of success on the Vi just last week, but they themselves, Riddle, have now abandoned his way, as UniQ smartly remove what is known as one of Banderas' pocket picks, the Fiora.
Immediately, and I think that Fiora as well is just a good ban away because it sets you up for a potential Cassante, a champion that on 13-1 has been very prevalent. You can just opt for a Cassante blind, you know, you've got the options of counters or picks that you go into it like the Jacks, but I think teams tend to be quite happy to trade that, and we've seen especially at the higher levels of play, Cassante do very well if we're looking at, you know, Fudge and Evie, and we've seen a couple of Cassantes not particularly hit that marker.
With the Maokai being banned away, I think it's fair to say that it's 3 junglers target banned away here from Antwer. You talked about him having a hard time on the Sin Sao, and with 3 junglers already banned away, the pool is really, really getting slim.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the bot lane right now. Normally we see a ton of bans thrown down there. Not particularly the case this time around. Yes, Ashe has been taken off the table. That's a flex pick between both roles down there. But looking at things like Lucian Nami, we've got a load of Heimerdinger pairings open. If you want to go Caitlyn Lux, that's also an option. Instead, it's going to be the Zeri ban, taking it away from Reptile. Like I said, had a great performance on it last week. And now we have to see what Riddle are prioritizing for that B1. Could they go to the jungle, the pool that they've pinched so heavily? And that's going to be the case. The Wukong picked up. Could very easily see a trade, so something like the Graves come through here, but I think we're already ditching into the lower portions of the jungle pool right now.
So as you said, you know, the jungle pool trimmed, let's see what they go with. Lucian Nami is obviously also an option if you just want to secure your bot lane here and take that combo straight away. In the end though, going towards the Varus.
Yeah, very safe blind, and you get to pair it with the Heimerdinger as well, right? One of those champions not banned away gives you just pretty much a winning lane already. Doesn't particularly matter what you're going to pick. If it is Lucian Nami, it's incredibly difficult to pilot for Riddle down on that bot side, and it's not something that I would have associated necessarily with Reptile being that more hyper carry focused player. But Ryze is a champion that is still open. I think this champion is incredibly powerful right now, and if you're gonna give it over to teams and they're not respecting the power of this pick, that's more on them. But Riddle right here could just say, okay, we'll snap it up on 3. But with the Sivir, they kind of have to take support pairing here for fear of getting, you know, these enchanters. It would have been Yumi Lulu banned out in the second phase. Instead, they pick themselves up the bot lane pairing. Now it's going to be the turn of attention back to UniQ. Do they want to risk jungle pool getting pinched more by Riddle, or do they go for a solo lane?
Let's see what they go for. And just to quickly remind you all, this is the Yumi before the nerf. We are still on 13.1, so it's not gutted or completely nerfed into the ground. It is still the very strong cat. And as the Udyr does get locked in, it means the bot lane and junglers are secured. So mid lane and top lane likely to be trimmed out as we move into the second ban phase.
Yeah, I think that onus is on Riddle to try and take away that Ryze. I know I'm talking about it a lot, but that champion is absolutely disgusting. If you're giving it over, then that's just free drafts for the enemy team. So right now, if you ban away good answers from the Ryze, the Azir is one that we've seen typically. We could just see things like Victor Corki also traded away on bans here. And it looks like it's going to be top lane for the final pick, I would imagine, for UniQ. They're setting up for a blind mid laner on 4 with some of these bans, and then go to the top lane after.
Yeah, Riddle tripping out that top lane pool, removing the Jax, one of the strongest scaling top laners in the game, away from Nihu, someone that I know he likes to play. I know it really is in the meta, but that's a Nihu's classic as well. They might want to target ban away if they feel like he could pop off on that. Regardless, though, it is the Camille being taken away, so yet another top laner being trimmed from the pool.
Interesting here. I think something along the lines of a Renekton as well is sort of where you're looking at when you've got a Jax ban as well. There are a lot of options open, and with the composition that Riddle have built, more dive, more access, more frontline is probably something that they're going to be quite happy to take. They've got a Sivir to enable the Wukong to go into the backline, but that Wukong wants somebody to go diving with, wants a buddy to be in the backline with the monkey, and making a lot of issues for this bot side.
So the Kassadin being the last ban here on the second ban phase, meaning that both Riddle and UniQ have banned a mid laner and a top laner each. Heading into now the fourth pick, that is over to the side of UniQ, who will need to pick their either top laner or mid laner, at the moment hovering the knob.
Interesting. Okay, we'll wait and see what gets locked in, but I do think that heading into this top side, they're obviously putting a lot of stock into Paul, that UniQ mid laner that we'd hyped up to be the core, the foundation really for UniQ. So what his counter pick is going to be on 5, certainly something that is, you know, enticing to me. What is the counter for Riddle? There have been plenty of OG Gnar counters in the past. I'm thinking Silas as one of them. You've also got Akali. Both of these are open, so you could go for like a weird double flex. The Silas is, you know, a great blind into the mid lane, but equally a great matchup into the Gnar. You steal away the Mega Gnar ulti, and you don't need to turn Mega to be able to use it.
It has incredible AP ratio as well, and someone who builds AP is the Silas, of course, so it deals insane amounts of damage, and as you say, you don't even need to turn Mega. So top lane, now the priority. I have highlighted Banderas as a carry top laner, but he is not one to shy away from taking the tanky role if that's what the team needs, and as they do hover the Ornn, that is very likely an opportunity for him to go towards that.
Now, of course, when you see a Silas locked in, you have to think, what A, can I lane into this with, but B, what am I not giving a great ultimate over to? I think that Corki hover was actually a very good example, because, you know, you only get a finite amount of rockets, whereas Corki's obviously recharge. But they are still looking for a bit more magic damage. Obviously, Antwer's build is going to be, well, we'll have to wait and see what it is, honestly, before we can make too much judgment on that. And it is the Syndra locked in. So, okay, nice bit of scaling into the late game, but also a fairly decent lane bully. And in combination with the Udyr, actually a lot of kill threat in the 2v2.
So to kind of summarize the draft, you just quickly mentioned the 2v2. Can you elaborate a little bit on especially the mid lane and the 2v2 junk matchup?
Yeah, so I'm looking at Syndra Udyr, right? What you look for in a 2v2 in general, CC, damage. Udyr has a lot of that, Syndra has a CC and a lot of damage. So when you've got both of those things in tandem, obviously we're looking at a fairly decent pairing. I will say, though, that for Riddle, they've got that mixed damage profile, which makes it difficult to itemize against. They've got physical damage from the Wukong, magic damage from the Silas. So we could just see that mid priority be incredibly impactful. Who gets that first move to a potential fight around a Scuttle Crab to an invade into the jungle be the defining feature, because if you manage to one-shot one carry, then you're in a 2v1 all of a sudden. Yes, your cooldowns may be over, but the base stats early on will do you a lot of work in a 1v2.
You're really smart, Wood. I feel like I'm getting free coaching sessions sometimes when I'm actually casting with you, because I can just ask questions I don't know the answer to, and you know I can gain the knowledge when I go into my own solo kit ventures later on. That's actually really interesting. Regardless,
I think,
though,
like, the easiest example.
Away.
The easiest example, right, is Victor. You ask how good Victor is in a 2v2, everyone says he sucks, right? Because his damage is fairly low and his CC is so situational. So early game Victor, you're not really looking at those mid 2v2s, but like I say, for the example, given Syndra Silas, they've both got the damage, they've both got the CC, and it's just a really easy metric at least to get a general sense of where you're going to be laying your priority.
So, to zoom back into the predictions, everyone, including you guys at home on Twitter, predicted Riddle to take this game. Obviously, they are 2-0 and UniQ 0-2, but after the draft route, do you feel more confident in the chances of UniQ, or are you still thinking Riddle will have this?
You know, I still give the edge to Riddle. I don't want to give either. I think that both of these teams have drafted fine, really. I think that there's going to be a bit of a question mark about build. I'm going to be looking heavily at the UniQ bot lane to see where their build paths go, because we've got an Ornn on the other side. And if I see an Ornn locked in and then a Lethality Varus locked in, my question becomes who's killing this tank? And if you've got a Syndra, obviously not the best tank shredder. Yes, you can opt into the Liandry's, but that doesn't offset the fact that Syndra is not an innate tank killer. It just sort of helps you a little bit. Looking for a bit of an on-hit style of Varus this game if you want to get through the Ornn, or to play heavily around the fact that this Ornn is going to have to be relegated to a side lane to answer the Gnar.
Taking it down back to the support role, I do want to talk a little bit about Pillarson, because when I think of Pillarson, who I have watched and casted for many years now, the first thing I think of is not a Heimerdinger or any other mage really. I normally think of an engaged tank support, so I'm really excited to see how he will do now in this more mage pokey role. And just talking a bit more about him and his history as well. He has been playing competitive for many years in the Danish scene with quite decent success as well. I particularly remember him on Vemelon where they qualified into the Danish first division, and they were so convincing that Godsend in the NLC, just when the NLC was made, thought, we are going to buy this roster. And Pedersen jumped with his team onto Godsend and made it into the playoff in his debut and their debut NLC split. Didn't make it far in that run, but he has actually made NLC playoffs back in the beginning of our, merging of our regions.
Onto the Rift though for game number 1. JK, not actually just yet. We've got to make sure that everything is set up. I think that those settings, I'm seeing champion names over champions, which is all very well and good for the mental in solo queue, but I don't believe it's what we're looking for. JK,
it's not beneficial.
JK, that's not the issue. It's not the issue. I'm going to stop predicting what production are changing without confirmation because that's going to land us both in trouble. And for the time being, what we get to see on this bot side is how to play versus Heimerdinger. Kill turrets, don't take damage. Easy enough.
Yeah, this is actually really interesting because this is something I watched in the LEC when Guldborg had to explain this. Heimerdinger plays his turret down in that little bottom corridor because it doesn't hit the minions initially, so it doesn't push the wave out for him. And we do see Riddle taking that away, being aware of the strengths of that Heimerdinger pick. As it is now in the mid lane, Fire Rain instantly goes in for a very aggressive trade as we're going to zoom back out and take a look at what the junglers do.
Okay, so first of all, both of these mid laners have gone for first strike, so the fact that Fire Rain is the one proccing it is innately very strong for the Sylas, gets him a little bit more gold. I also want to say, Sylas should never be the one proccing first strike in this matchup when he starts with E. Syndra has got way too much range for that to be allowed, and we are just seeing the power of Fire Rain in a 1v1 right now. Paul is already down to a third of his HP, has chugged both potions already. We are 2 minutes and 10 seconds into the game. And I'm looking at, D-Shield in the mid lane. There's a lot of health or a lot of sustain in that already with an extra potion. Fire Rain's playing really well.
Yeah, so as you're saying, Fire Rain playing really well, the Korean import, of course, but I want to take a look at our junglers and see where they are. So they have started on opposite sides of the map, and we're starting up on this top side, while Johan started on the bottom side. This means they won't meet each other for the Scotland Crabs, but what does this mean for where they initially want to put that pressure?
Interestingly, I'll say playing toward the Varus Heimerdinger lane, this says that Antwer's sort of predicting an answer or predicting a gank potentially from Johan, saying that he wants to support this 3v3 that he's anticipating on the bot side. But that's actually not going to be the case. He's actually moving up toward this top side, and Johan is going to be ganking the Ornn, or at least in position to gank for the Ornn, right? It doesn't necessarily have to happen. But I am expecting this Nord to be under a little bit of pressure through the early stages. I'm going to cut back to ourselves for just a little bit, though, to keep you guys, enticed, excited about where the junglers go, because you're never bound by full clear into gank as a jungler. Yes, it's a great notion, and obviously you can do it, but in certain instances, you just want to get a crab, you just want to reset, get some vision down. There are lots of things that you can do on this window. Both of them are going to opt into the crab now, and then we're going to see potentially where the first discrepancies happen. This is where you either base and reset your camps, this is what Antwer's looking for, or potentially go for vision in the enemy jungle whilst you've got a bit of a window.
Yeah, so Johan now recalling as well, looking like both junglers do just want to go back and not really look to gain anything, just research those camps as you said. So, talking a bit more about this 2v2, safe to say Keeper doesn't have much roaming potential in this early game, but going up against the Heimerdinger, how does this matchup work out, and how is Keeper supposed to play this?
Keeper is already doing exactly what he's supposed to do. Sit attached, heal Reptile. There is going to be poke coming from Varus, there is going to be poke coming from Heimerdinger. Keeper's job is to sustain mana and heal up his AD carry, and thus far, it's going perfectly well, right? They're fairly even in CS. There's a reset going to come through for the UniQ bot side right now. It's not particularly the most difficult lane to know how to execute, more so whether or not they can execute on it by dodging out on the skill shots from those missiles, from any projectiles launched by Cyrex, and as we can see thus far, not all bad. Want to quickly draw your attention to the rune choices of this bot lane as well, and in particular to Cyrax. I asked, would he go for the lethality? Would he go for the on-hit? Lethal Tempo strongly suggests the on-hit, so I'm a lot happier, and there's a lot more of an idea that they can indeed kill this Ornn. The question I will have, though, is how many auto attacks are you going to be able to do versus a Sylas and a Wukong? Because Wukong has been the bane of Varus's life for the last, I'll say, 6 months of League of Legends. Sylas on top of that, when he's stealing away Gnar ulti, stealing away Chains of Corruption, it could be difficult for Cyrax to navigate these team fights, regardless of build.
See how that does end up working out when we get to that point. Drake now on the map, and as Pilsen rotates, they might want to look for something mid. If they don't, they could go towards Drake. Regardless though, they are on a mission for something, as Pilsen just looks to head back to his lane after gaining that little bit of vision.
Yeah, just a little roam window there from Pilsen, just taking the little bit of time extra to walk into the mid lane, lay down just a smattering of vision, even if it is just that one ward, adds that element of safety for Paul. Not going to be particularly relevant for the time being, as we can see. Johan is up on this top side, has made his way in, and now with NiHu's at 6, this could be a great bait.
Yeah, a bit too aggressive there. She actually double jumps forward, does have the Mega Gnar, and will be able to gnar them away. Flash still available if he felt like it would be needed, but just instantly starts the recall. Riddle is okay and hard pushed away.
Yeah, I really like the instant recall, actually, because he knows that there's a big wave going to get crashed into his turret, wants to get back to base to regen his health, and then teleport back into the lane so he misses as little as possible underneath that turret. A gank that ultimately doesn't really yield that much. NiHu's burning ulti there isn't too impactful. It means that the all-in potential has gone down a little bit, but Banderas was probably going to be fine in that 1v1 anyway. NiHu's now just has a little bit less all-in capability, and it opens up Antwerp to do exactly what we see them doing, taking the Drake down on the bot side.
Yeah, that will obviously be secured away. No contention at all, as Johan is just taking away the red buff in response. And talking a bit more about the top lane in terms of all-in potential, Banderas has rushed, ran any percent Warden's Mail, so the damage from NiHu's will be very limited at this point of the game as well. So, personally speaking, as an Gnar player, I would not expect an all-in at this point because you simply can't deal any damage to him. But eyes on Andrew actually, because he realizes his red buff is now being taken away, and he will respond by taking away Johan's red buff himself.
Yeah, so nothing is actually... I'll say this is obviously beneficial for UniQ, just because all of the camps are traded, but they get an extra dragon out of it. NiHu's didn't burn flash, which is the really important part about that top gank. What I now need to see is a potential look back up toward the top lane, see if they can burn NiHu's flash, see if they can look to exploit the mini Gnar potentially with that squishiness that he has innately. You've got Wukong level 6 now, you've built into this Caulfield's Warhammer, so a bit more CDR oriented, but you do have some damage in there regardless. And actually, really great highlighting from our observers here. Kiba abandoning Reptile for the first time ever, setting out on the map. Rift Herald spawns in about 10 seconds. It actually just spawned now, Duckling. So we attach to the Wukong, who is level 6, and we pray that we can have a great fight.
Yeah, last year, Kiba spent a lot of his time roaming on things like Nautilus, getting around the map himself. Now, you know, just has to find the nearest taxi and jump on board, as he will now look to get this Rift Herald with his team. Paul looking to reset as well, so there will be a mid lane weak, as Fire Rain has already made his way back into the mid lane. Man advantage here for Riddle. Priority as well on the top lane, so they'll just move in. Let's see what Pilsen can do. Andrew, could theoretically run in and try and steal it, but it's a fight they don't want to risk, right?
Looks like there's not been too much of a contest. NiHu's here, just throwing a boomerang. Rift Herald does get secured, and that's off the earlier base timer. It looks like the fact that Kiba was there, he's obviously lost a lot of experience. It has been gained by Reptile as a solo, but that early move from the support opens up the window for a Rift Herald take, and now we get to see, does Johan repay that? Is he going to look to, you know, put it down on the spot side and give Reptile a bit of gold back? Or is it going to be the case that we're looking to break open this Sylas, give Fire Rain a bit more of a window into the match and accelerate his pacing?
Let's see what happens up in top in here. NiHu does have the ult available. Good damage though from Banderas. Exhaust coming out as well. Very nice interrupt on the Gnar way. NiHu still has the flash though, so could look to get out. Banderas set to follow, and as that Q misses barely, NiHu makes it out alive.
Oh, it's not done yet, Johan.
Johan is gonna pick this up. That's the first blood as well. He's always where he needs to be. And that's Herald that they could put down as well. No TP on NiHu, as he will also respawn in just 20 seconds.
Yeah, I wonder what the play is going to be. They've obviously got a great window to use the Herald, but look at this response from UniQ. Paul roaming down from the mid lane, had that push. We've got Antwerp here as well. This is a 4v2, TP ready.
Yeah, on the hunt available, as Reptile will just run, not hunting anyone. as they will do some damage back on Antwerp, but he's tanky. No one will die though. Fire Rain forced to TP, and that's all Unique get out.
5 summoner spells though, burned by Riddle. All 4 combat sums off of Riddle, the teleport as well, in exchange for just the Ghost off Antwerp and actually Cyrax's Flash. The Chain of Corruption going wide there does actually cost them quite significantly. They may have been able to chase down Reptile and catch him out under the turret if that chain lands, but it's not the case, and Reptile, with some fancy feet, some great timing of the cooldowns, does get out to safety.
That is something that I will keep my eyes on. How do they punish this though? Because it's all good and well getting the summoners, but you need to be able to get more and get some sort of advantage out of those massive cooldowns. Reptile still formants and the Flash, of course, as now it looks to be the bot lane of Unique caught out. Cyrax luckily gets away as Johan clones forward but unable to find anyone.
Nothing doing down on that bot side, but we have made it to 10 minutes, 11 minutes into this game right now, and the game is still fairly even. A reminder that everybody said, well, we're expecting this to be fairly Riddle-sided. And as we look later and later into the game, I do tend to agree with that. I'm quite happy with a Sivir Ornn as a basic duo for late game supremacy. You add on top of the fact that you've got Yuumi and a Wukong causing a massive amount of disruption on that back line. I really don't mind Riddle playing this one a little slower. The fact that they've only got the 1 kill doesn't scream, we need to be sounding the alarm and danger alert because they're going to be falling behind and getting outscaled. Unique do have tools for the late game, don't get me wrong. But an Enchanter is going to scale better than the Heimerdinger, and the Sivir we know is a menace in a late game team fight, much more than an on-hit Varus will be.
And it's very important to mention as well here, Rue, that they are actually even in gold despite being down a kill, thanks to their good CSing. There's a small CS lead in both top, jungle, and AD carry. As a very minor one in mid lane as well, 3 CS over into the favor of Unique, and as Riddle will now look to get this second Drake, they will even that score out, but they are still slightly behind in the CS department.
And as you mentioned here, Duckling, second Drake was the call. It looks like Riddle are going to be able to take this one fairly freely. I really like that Banderas had already reset, had moved his way into this bot side because they'd placed a lot of priority here on this Riddle. They don't need the Ornn, but they may well regret that TP away.
Yeah, TP can come in from Nihus if he wants to. Will be quite a bit away though, and the Drake falls low, and it has been secured by Pillarson as Johan decides to go for the fight. Instead, Cyrax taken down, 2 kills for Zero as Reptile down to 1 HP. The grenade misses though, and that means 2 kills for Riddle, but the Drake to Unique.
Yeah, they get the Drake Duckling, but it's at what cost, right? They lose their AD, they lose their mid laner, both of which would love to be farming these waves right now, but that's 10-15 seconds they are off the map, not getting experience, not getting gold, not getting items that they're going to need to carry later on into this game. And that second Drake secure is great for Unique. It's the missiles actually that steal it. Kind of a strange one to see the support able to take it away. But the mid and bot just get fed to the wolves, really. We see Antwerp just kind of running away as soon as they recognize their carries are dead, which is pretty much what you're supposed to be doing, in fairness. So with this Divine Sunderer picked up for Johan, he's now in a very good position on the Wukong to make more plays, to accelerate the pace of the game. They're 3 kills to the good now, and whilst we mentioned that gold lead was in favour of Unique, it's just now tippled over into Riddle's favour off the back of those kills, and expect now to be that window where we really see it skyrocket. 1,300 gold discrepancy between these two junglers. It's the difference of the completed Mythic versus not having one for Antwerp, and I do expect to see Johan out and about on the map when that Cyclone comes back up in about 20-30 seconds to make more plays happen.
At the very least though, Rude, I will say I find this to be a massive positive for Unique and for the league as a whole, right? Riddle were dominant in week number 1, very quickly taking games of their opponents and building early leads and snowballing them to near perfection. This time around though, Unique and O2 team are keeping them at bay. Yes, it is only 15 minutes, the game is far from over, but it could still go anywhere, and I honestly had a bit of a horror scenario where, Riddle would get a couple early kills, snowball that lead, and the game would be done in 5 minutes time. But this feels like it's a game that could go on for 20-35 minutes more, really. It could be a very close one, and both teams could still come out on top.
Time now to take a quick look at another build path. I'll hold it, actually. Johan is top lane, and we do see Nihus with that Megan already. They're just waiting for the hop right now.
Yeah, Kiba is there as well, so it's a 3v1. Nihus does have the flash. Last chapter comes out. Forge God as well. Yeah, he's spinning around for hours at a time. Frequent flyer miles, as Johan will secure that one. That's his 3rd kill of the game, as they will look to take the top lane tier 1 after that.
Shout out Kiba. Make sure that he's getting his Spellthief gold and getting his fair share as well. Accelerate yourself toward your mythic of choice, be it the Moonstone, be it the Shirelles. Don't know which one it's going to be just yet. But with that top tier 1 not actually being the one that falls first, it was a race against the bot lane, and it's a race that UniQ have won. They did put a lot of stock into this bot side, if you recall, relative to Riddle. Kiba has been more at liberty to take those roams, and obviously when you pick a Heimerdinger matchup, you are going to be winning out in that bot lane push fairly significantly, so no surprises to see the first brick fall in favour of Cyrax. But again, it's worth mentioning that that's a lot of gold invested into this Varus. Cyrax is the one that has all of the resources thus far from UniQ, and we have to see whether or not that return on investment is going to be effective.
And I do want to talk about this as well in terms of the AD carries, because these are two different playstyles, I would say, in terms of what you're building, right? Cyrax going for the unhit, while Reptile is going for the crit. When we reach the late point of the game, is there any of these two styles, you know, the full crit or the unhit, that outscales the other?
I mean, I think that's very champion dependent, right? If you've got a Vayne in this situation, then I think that's very different to having a Varus. I think this does actually come down to champion specifics, and I'm always going to give the edge over to a Sivir if you're getting a clumped up team fight, just because of those ricochets and the rework that happened to him midway through Season 12 just became so much more dominant in a team fight. If we get to a late game phase, Reptile just has my number. I think that beside champions as well, I favour Reptile as an AD carry over Cyrax. So all of the signs for me pointing toward the Riddle ADC.
I mean, that's a very fair answer, and likely a team fight could be on the cards as well. Soul Point very early on the cards in just 45 seconds. Person already trying to get some area control, but as Riddle have 5 man towards this mid lane, and River, they have the area at the moment.
The little dance that you do now, as everybody knows this Drake is the objective of choice, who can get control of mid lane and then leverage that into control of the river. You see Riddle, they were confident enough to step up and clear the way first. They get to have access to this river first of all. Nice little angle, I will say, from Banderas. He's just hovering below UniQ, and if they get too comfortable around this big knuckle, they could be in trouble.
Yeah, there is the engage. The Gnar hijacked away, and it one-shots Nihus alongside as all the other ultimates goes out. That is 5 ultimates used on the side of Riddle as they will move towards the Drake, just spawning now. 4v5, UniQ do still have 3 ultimates available though.
Yeah, this bot side river for red side is such a big commitment to play around that big choke right there. You can see trying to get out of that river into the lane. Such a long walk and actually very difficult to do, and immediately Riddle spot the angle, Johan goes in, Kiba on the back, and the Call the Forge God from downtown. It's all too easy. The team fighting for Riddle just lines itself up essentially and makes it a one and done situation for them. UniQ can't press forward to get the dragon. They don't feel comfortable to press forward and hit this mid turret either. So Riddle just get everything they want and are completely controlling this mid game.
I will say I have been very impressed by Riddle in the NLC Division 1 so far, particularly, you know, how much on the same page they've been. It's very rare to see a team with so many different players from so many different previous teams come together and so immediately be on the same page, read from the same story, and commit to the same place, because everyone agreed they had to go there, and they just one-shotted Nihus. He didn't have anything he could do, as all the ultimates came out in unison, just took him down.
And obviously, reminded that this is a team with 2 Korean imports on, those communication barriers you expect to be there. But what we got a little bit of insight to last week, an interview with one of the Riddle staff players afterwards, is that Firen and Johan just speak fluent English, right? That's not necessarily an issue that they are running into. So they're feeling very confident to make these calls and make these plays aggressively and try to find these fights.
And that could very often be the thing, as many of the Korean imports have failed, you know, communication issues. Yes, they were good players, but the team just never really came together, and it feels like this has already succeeded here, as you say. They speak fluent English, that barrier simply isn't there, and they still have the skill. As a Korean player would see, 3 kills, 2 assists. Johan has been involved with every bit of action that has happened this game for Riddle, and has been immensely successful already after 3 games, and it's very clear to feel that this guy has been at the top of the LCK. Reminder, he has gotten 3rd place in a split playing against Down1 T1, and he was playing, it's not like he was a substitute, he was the main jungler for Hanwha in 2021, so it's no surprise when we found out he still had the level that he's able to perform this one.
Yeah, it's good for us to come in with those expectations a little dimmer, obviously, after a year off, but it's even better for us to see that that was unfounded and that this guy is actually still incredibly talented at jungle, at League of Legends. So kudos to Johan for, as we've mentioned, what has been a fire start to the split. And hopefully they can just look to extend it here. 3-0 is looking on the cards for them. That gold lead may only be 1,000, but in terms of momentum, the way the game has been going, Riddle are really in control right now. They've stopped the Drake stacking for UniQ. They are keeping Reptile on pace with his farm. He's even with the Varus right here, and shouldn't really feel too uncomfortable going into a late game team fight. The threat from a Udyr is obviously a lot more telegraphed, doesn't have a stealth like a Wukong does to try and cause issues. And you can just see, on top of the fact that the Udyr is a little more difficult to get into the backline with, it's a lot more difficult to take out this Wukong than you might expect because there's a Uni on his back.
Yeah, he's very fast and heals quite a bit as well. Does still have the clone, and that will go out. Final chapter pop, but just to make sure that Johan is safe. Baron on the map as well, but I should say, the goal... Go on.
It's just as we praise the communication between the team. There's a miscommunication there. I think Clone is enough to get out. They opt to go for Final Chapter, and Clone probably only needed one of those. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah, so what I wanted to ask you here, Rude, is because I want to take it over to UniQ's perspective. You say the goal lead is, yes, it's only really 2k, it's not all doom and gloom, but the momentum very much in Riddle's favor. But what can UniQ do now to get back? They're hitting their item spike, and as I say that, Johan looking for something, unable to find it. But they're not that far behind in gold. What can they do to get back?
I need to see them try and lane assign the Gnar versus the On. I think that's their best way to generate an advantage somewhere. Put Nihus up against Banderas, has a level advantage, has got a Trinity Force, and is sitting on, I imagine, a lot of gold right now to, get into that second item spike. The issue is that Riddle have done a very good job at matching with Sylas instead, and obviously that Sylas is a completely different fiend for Nihus to try and take out. Is 1 minute away from having that fully stacked Rod of Ages, is almost finished that Zhonya's Hourglass as well. So going into the 1v1 Sylas versus Gnar, I don't know who I'd want to give the 1v1 edge over to, but if I'm looking at this from UniQ's perspective, Nihus should know that he can dumpster Banderas in the side lane. If he can get into that 1v1, there's a window for UniQ to have a lead.
It's something at the very least. As the 2,000 goalie doesn't feel like much, but as you're saying, the momentum so much in Riddle's favor. And at the moment, I'm waiting, eyeing on that Baron. When will they start up? When will they go for the play? Or will they say, no, not now? There's still another drink spawning in 10 seconds. We could go for that instead and just continue denying UniQ that sort of win condition by getting the soul.
Yep, and Riddle know exactly what they need to do this game, is that at some point they will be able to just hit Baron, it will die, and they can use that to close out a game. As long as Reptile's farming and getting consistent sources of income, Riddle don't really care, because this Sivir will be able to carry them through the late game. This slow, methodical approach to how to close out this game really doesn't bother me at all, and you can see they're heading toward that dragon. The pressure now obviously on UniQ to say, we're going to make a play on the other side of the map. There are 3 people from Riddle down in this bot lane, and they've bitten. They've said, okay, we'll do the Baron now. What are you going to do about it? Do you stop the Drake? Do you not? All it ends up being is just a clearing of vision and a bit of a hit onto this top tier 1 turret. And again, if you're Riddle, you're more than happy with that. Don't mind sacrificing a little bit here because you know you're not losing the Baron. And when this Drake goes down, you're now in a much better position to try and set up for this Baron. Play through top, play through mid lane, control that top side jungle, and try and play for picks.
And while UniQ so far are surviving 24 minutes without being a sizable goalie down, mentioned it a million times, I'll say it one last time, momentum against their favor. Riddle feel in control as they've picked up the last 2 neutral objectives as well. But talking a bit more about Reptile here, I do want to highlight, if you guys didn't know where this guy came from, he popped up on Unicorns of Love 6th edition in the spring split over in the Prime League and had very good success, made it through the play-ins of the Amazon European Masters, made it all the way to the quarterfinal where he was very, very important in their important fights in their group stage games, especially against some of the bigger teams. And as he now found himself in summer, unable to really find his footing, he got benched and Shikanari came in instead. Unicorns of Love had this massive success without him, and a lot of people forgot about Reptile. But as he has now come to the NLC on Riddle, he's really shown himself back and say, yeah, I'm still insane. I've made top 8 at Amazon European Masters. Respect me. And he has definitely delivered that level of high level of AD carriness over here in the NLC.
Yeah, demanded really that his opponents give him the respect. Has had, like I say, 2 stellar performances thus far already, and now you can see Riddle really implementing that plan of choke out topside vision, play for a fight with Johan on the back, or Johan on the back of an engage. We're really looking for just one more fight to really snowball this game. Like you said, Duckling, that the gold lead isn't too large. There's still that window that we feel like UniQ might be able to find a 5v5 that could go their way if they have a little bit of an outplay, if they manage to get a good, successful team fight going where NLC finds a big mega or something of the like. There is a window still for a win for UniQ here. The game is by no means over, but NLC's being caught is not the answer.
And wow, he's dead. He can absolutely explode. The 4th time that has happened this game. An unfortunate one for the Danish veteran. He has struggled to find his footing in this game despite getting that 2 item spike.
I will say though, if Riddle don't get more from this, I actually favour the last couple of minutes for UniQ. They are looking to extend this into a Baron. NLC has 25 seconds before he respawns, but has TP. The big front line for UniQ isn't particularly there without this, nor it's really on Antwerp to try and get in and cause disruption. Buy space for Cyrex, buy space for Paul. It looks like they've done it. They've stopped the Baron. It's a kill in the top side. Can they get Pillarson though?
Yeah, no cycle on Johan, and he's quite there.
If we look at the last sort of 2 minutes or so, UniQ have taken mid tier 1, bot tier 2 in exchange for Riddle getting a kill onto NLC, who was already 0-3, so he's going to be worth a little bit less in respect to that gold. So UniQ actually making some fairly decent map moves and getting themselves that more generation of gold to keep them competitive in this match.
And when we then get to the point where there will be a big 5v5 that very likely will decide the outcome of the whole game, on Riddle, you have a lot of strong members, right? Reptile on 2.5 items, 2.5 items on Fire Rain as well. Johan 3-0-3 on a Wukong with a Yuumi on him, with 2 damage-oriented items as well. Which one of these is the most important target for UniQ to focus? Who are we keeping our eyes on to say when they are down, UniQ have a chance?
Sivir, always Sivir. Late game marksman's a king, right? So as we get into these late game team fights, you have to try and find Reptile, see if you can get an angle onto him. He hasn't finished that Infinity Edge yet, which could be pivotal for this upcoming fight. I mean, pending something is going to happen. Baron down to 8,500, TP available for NLC, he's looking for it.
Yeah, Johan guns over and they have rooted up Paul, who's forced to go golden. Pillarson already dead, and the knock-up not able to find him, but Paul will be found by death himself. As Antwerp, Nihus, and Cyrex now on the run, it is Riddle who will turn back towards the Baron and likely secure it.
The turn, Death Ball, and engage is just too easy for Riddle. They've called the Forge God. They can Wukong clone into Cyclone over the wall, catch out Peterson, catch out Paul. Both of these mages fall in a split second. And Riddle secure themselves the Baron. It's been a long time coming here, took them up to 28 minutes. But that slow and steady pace of the game has really favoured them. They go back, Reptile finishes the Infinity Edge. We get to see this 3-item Sivir now out onto the map. UniQ, if they extend for a little bit too long here, may go for this Drake, but with 25 seconds still before it spawns, I imagine they're going to get pushed off of this, and now Riddle should really look to force the issue. See if they can find a lot more turrets and probably break open the base with this. They have got such powerful carries. Banshee's Veil finished now for Fire Rain as well. Level 17, picking him off is going to be so difficult, and that's 2 carries already that I feel are going to be out DPSing everybody from UniQ.
And not only did Riddle get the Baron, they also got the 3rd item on Reptile as well as Fire Rain, so that's now a Banshee's Veil. So Fire Rain has become tankier, does more damage as well. Reptile getting a massive 3-item power spike with that Infinity Edge. And that's the 3rd Drake for both teams, soul points for Riddle and UniQ now on the map. It's very hard for UniQ to even walk into their own jungle as Johan is here, and he will simply one-shot anyone who steps into his vicinity. And now it's Pillarson to fall as well. That's the double kill over to the side of Riddle, and it's with the Baron. They can simply push down mid lane and look to take an inhibitor at the least.
They don't even need the Drake Duckling. Yes, it's a nice formality that they can pick it up, but it's not the soul. They're not going to be bound by it. Send one member, it's not a big deal. Johan can finish this one off. Reptile through the mid lane destroys these turrets in a second with that Phantom Dancer, the best turret killing Zeal item you can go for on a marksman. And here's that replay, right? Just like I said, Wukong has been the bane of Varus's existence for so long at this point that it's so easy for for Johan to find a way in. So easy for him to take down Cyrax. They're looking for Fire Rain, but there's a TP behind.
Yeah. This could be the first kill for UniQ in this whole game, as Fire Rain goes quite low. Kingsley could be available in a couple of seconds. He goes golden, buys the time for Antwerp to fall, and he's out to safety. 11-0 on the kill board. Now the gold lead starting to reflect that as well.
Yeah, and the game slowly but surely here has just descended into Riddle-favoured anarchy. Little few picks here and there, kills that have gone their way that they probably shouldn't have received. That, for example, an overchase from UniQ. But it's just a great look for Riddle. They've got this inhibitor down in the mid lane. They can use Banderas just to coax in these super minions and have the carries out in the side lanes, farming those up and pushing in those side waves also.
Yeah. I am being told by our production that we do have some ping issues, and that's the reason of this pause, and that's why you get to look at me and Riddle's handsome faces for a couple more minutes tonight. How lucky can you guys be? As Riddle, let's just kind of summarize what happened this game, right? Because yes, the goal lead was close for a very, very long time, but every time a fight or something happened, it felt like Riddle were in control and had all the momentum in the world.
Yeah, they just had the setup for it, and I think this comes down to a little bit of the compositional differences of these two teams. A Wukong versus an Udyr, for example. A Wukong is going to be able to find really powerful 5v5 engages. We get to see as well just like these little glimpses of early game power that we did see from Riddle. They didn't find the kill here, but these were highlights that we don't see from UniQ, right? We're showing these Riddle plays through the early game, and granted, these weren't particularly important to the outcome of the game, but it just goes to show you how when they're making the proactive plays, they make them successful. And this is a great example of one that didn't pan out for UniQ. That 4v2 dive on the bot side didn't end up going their way. And this is that first real glimpse at a 5 versus 5. Even though the top laners aren't there, it's still that larger scale skirmish that goes in favour of Riddle. Pretty much the story of the match.
And it's so crazy how no one from Riddle has died. There have been multiple incidents where they have been low, but they just didn't fall, and it feels like UniQ now really getting punished for that, unable to get that extra bit of gold. They have been good picking up the turrets. They have been good to not die too much, all things considered, but after that Baron fight, it just all goes out of control. As you can see here, they can't even step into their own jungle, and they just lose objectives left, right, and center.
It's a little bit of a tricky one as well, right? With Cyrax being caught out on those wolves, you saw actually the check with the rockets, and it's one of those where you're like, surely there's nobody in here. We're not anticipating there's people this far up in our jungle. So you throw the rockets in and then chase after them, anticipating that it's clear. But then they hit something, and you sort of jump scared a little bit by the fact that there's actually a target in there. And all of a sudden, once you've registered that, it's gone through your brain. It's too late. Cyrax has been jumped on. It's been taken out by Johan. So overall, a really methodical closeout by Riddle. They have been very strong when it comes to taking these leads and accelerating the pace of the game at their own pace. It is worth mentioning. You know, we touched on that this game has been a little bit, not necessarily slower, but it's been leisurely, I'm going to go with, right? It wasn't a, okay, 20 minutes has hit the board, they're 10k gold to the good, this game's already done for. It has been, okay, we've got Sivir, we'll take the advantages where you present them, aka NiHu stepping up in side lanes, has had a bit of a tough time of just not quite respecting the vision that he's got, and just giving over a few freebies over to Riddle.
Yeah, I very much agree with that sentiment as well, because it was what I was expecting. I was expecting chaos. I was expecting many kills to go back and forth, but it was always Riddle who would come out a tiny bit on top. I did not expect this clean of a performance, this control of a performance from Riddle there, but yes, it would extend the whole game time, but they have felt in control for 90% of the game, if not more, so very, very impressed by Riddle. I will say there have been some good things in here as well from the league. I have liked some of their ideas. The execution hasn't always been there, but these are positives, so that to me, going up against what is one of the two strongest teams in our region, it's very nice to be able to play this sort of even game state and trade some objectives here and there. When they get a turn, you get a turn as well. It's good things to build upon throughout the next coming weeks and start getting those wins on the board hopefully soon.
yeah, like you say, right, before that, Baron was really happy with their objective play, taking turrets around the map. It's important to remember as well that UniQ, who are 0-2 and on the verge, it looks like, of going 0-3, have had the hardest schedule that you could get in NLC. They have played Ruddy, they have played Nord, and now they are playing Riddle. So those are the 3 games that going in, I think that a lot of our teams are a bit more skeptical about whether or not they can take wins. UniQ, yes, they've not been boasting wins on the board just yet, but their strength of schedule has been incredibly tough. So I think going into not just tomorrow, but to future weeks as well, the fact that we've seen these highlights from UniQ could very well be a glimpse of what they can perform like up against teams that might not have the same pedigree as the 3 that we've just seen them lose to.
And that is, you know, a positive, right? We're looking for positives because, let's be honest, it has been a rough off-season for Riddle as a whole. We're only down to 8 teams now. We're not even in the studio. I'm sitting at home all of a sudden. So to see the fact that we still have teams, you know, able to improve, able to show a good level, and I will say Riddle look like a really good team. I would be happy if we send someone of their caliber, regardless of the names, to the now EMEA Masters. We have to remember that. That's changed now. But I would be happy if we send someone who can be competitive because, to be honest, you know, we had that one split, 3 teams, everything was going to be going great. And now, you know, we're unaccredited, we only have 2 seeds. But if we can send at the very least 1 or 2 seeds that will be competitive and be able to take down the other non-accredited ERLs, so we can say we're the best of those guys, I will be very satisfied personally.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that we've got 3 very strong seeds to be sending here. The question has been, I know that the NLC gets 2 seeds. The NLC, as this league, has got 3 strong teams that we are all sort of seeing which of the ones are going to get sent. So there's a lot of expectation, I feel like, for the region as a whole to boast that, you know, we did get unaccredited, but we still fight back because we aren't one of those, you know, credited ERLs anymore, but we could still potentially be top 3, top 4, because obviously with the incorporation of the TCL, the Arabian League as well, there is a lot more talent on display, and where the NLC falls in that pecking order is now a lot more disputed.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how we stack up against the other ERLs, particularly Ultra League, because those guys are still accredited. And I do think that we should be able to at the very least match that level of gameplay. I would be satisfied with that. You know, if we could take a game off Prime League as well, that would feel very good. Obviously, we don't have the same rivalry with them anymore because we don't share the same studio. Regardless, though, I think, you know, the issues should be resolved within 2 to 5 minutes, I have been told. But that's in TV time, so it could be 10, 20. I don't know how long I'll be sitting here before we get back into the game. And Rude, with that, I will be taking you on a journey with me to what I call bring me your top 2. If you today were to send 2 teams to the EMEA Masters, Rude, which 2 teams would you send? I'm gonna put you
okay.
in the spot. Yeah, I'm gonna.
Now, do you want me to send the 2 teams that I want to have the best chance at winning, or that would give us the best content?
The 2 teams that would make us the most proud in terms of performance. You know, how far they could go.
Yeah, all right. I'll take Riddle because I don't think you can doubt how they've performed, and I think that whilst obviously they've got these Korean imports on the team as well, if we're looking for particularly regional pride, that might not resonate quite so much. But I think that making the region proud as a whole, I think that with the level of performance they've put out, they'd be a very good show or very good team to send. I'm going to throw a little bit of a spanner into the works here because this isn't one that I don't think people would have expected. But I think for a bit more flavor, I want to send over Verdant because they have got 5 Scandinavian players. They are all, you know, inducted into the region, and they've also got a different style to, I think, anybody in the league. I think that they have a very clear defined play style. We've seen Nilla thus far really perform on split push duty. There's a little bit more for them to flesh out before it gets, you know, completely flawless, and you know that's to be expected, right? We're not on the LEC stage. This is still the division below. But I do think that sending Verdant would give an extra little bit of layering to the NLC that teams might not expect.
That is actually really spicy. You didn't take Nord, and you know, obviously they went 2-0. They have a strong roster, and we all know how the LFL has been carrying us in terms of viewership whenever Nord is about to play. So, very brave of you to say that those guys would not be going. If you then were to change that list,
sorry,
they will find you.
Yeah.
Regardless, though, Rude, if you were to change it to top 2 in content, can you give me that before we throw it to a break?
I mean, okay, so top 2 for content, I would have gone for Verdant as well, just by nature of the split push. But then you've got to put Ruddy in there, because I think that Ruddy have been the content kings thus far for social media content and for actually, you know, playing to have some good fun on the Rift. Game number 1, they slaughtered their opponents. Game number 2, they got slaughtered. They've had the best up and down. So across the board, that's where you're going.
And obviously, this is the NLC. We are, you know, all the Scandinavian countries and the UK as well. And I do want to ask you, Root, Sunday, something very special happened here in Denmark. Do you know what it is? Something very big. Someone became world champions in something. And if I were to say handball, do you know what that sport is?
I do know what handball is. Yes, I thought it was going to be rally kart racing. It wasn't that,
No.
but handball.
What is that?
You race cars down hills and in the snow. Did you win at handball?
Yeah, Denmark
The
became
Danes.
the back-to-back world champions at handball. And you know who they beat?
Sweden.
The French.
Oh,
No. Sweden got knocked
Hold
out
on.
by France. So, you know, we took revenge for Scandinavian brothers. Regardless, though, that's your fun fact of the day. And I just wanted to get that out there because I'm a proud Dane.
Thank
And
you.
every time we do something good, I will mention it and I will not let it go because sometimes it's good to be proud of your country. I know you UK folks can't agree with that because you live in the UK. I'm sorry. I made a lot of enemies
no
by that
comment.
statement.
I choose not to pass comment on
And with
that one.
that, and with that, I think we'll throw it to a break before I get 5 UK roadmen starting to knock on my window and asking where I am. I'll throw it to a break. See you then.